Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? You're feeling, free to do as you please as the restrictions have lifted, just like I have?
Yes, well, that's right. No, I'm still staying home, and that's not because of social distancing or isolation or anything like that. I just enjoy it.
Exactly. But isn't that the guidance? Yeah, we've opened it up a little bit more, but you really should just be staying at home.
Well, we did have this conversation last week, and they obviously listened to this podcast because they took all of our advice.
No, we should have our own committee. All right. So before we get into that sort of thing, got a few tech stories to get through. So funny enough, as we were talking about Skype before we got on, messing around with settings, we didn't even know if we were going to be able to record this thing today because of the mucking around and stuff. But the interesting thing was the story of Microsoft essentially shoehorning Skype into Microsoft Teams going forward, although the latest report being that it's being delayed due to, I like this, the initial feedback from the early adopters was suboptimal. Suboptimal is one of my favorite words. But
Teams in general? Because I had a suboptimal experience.
I mean, you can see the potential for what it's trying to do, even though there's probably other platforms that do it already. The thing is that it's very Microsoft in nature, in that they'll just put it out there and it doesn't work the way it's supposed to, or it doesn't, or you question, why haven't they done this already, or why did they do it this way? The engineer mindset applied to a sort of a form and intuition perspective in terms of how you would interact with it. I mean, I've started using it for work, and it's been reasonable through the network and stuff when it's sort of plugged in with the rest of your Office 365 kind of setup. But it makes me wonder, with the thought that Skype is going to be pushed into Teams, and then I guess eventually Skype will just disappear. If they don't make an option available beyond organizations, are there going to be people that are going to miss the fact that Skype's not around as an option anymore? I don't know.
Well, I don't know either. I just think they've missed the boat, haven't they? I mean, Zoom's come in and Zoom's now number one, and it's unfortunate. It's like, everything that came second to Facebook or Google. I think everything that might come second to Zoom now, at least for the foreseeable future. Look, I had my own experience with Teams, and it's interesting. I felt the same way as you. It was reasonable. A few glitches, but it was reasonable. And I wouldn't rave about Zoom either, by the way, but Zoom's way better. So,
well, essentially, if all it requires is you send a link, click on the link, and then you start, given the amount of extra steps you have to do in Teams, that should tell you all you need to know.
That's precisely right. And, look, we could speculate for hours, when you have to shoehorn something like Teams or Skype into an existing package like Office 365, it's never going to be simple to integrate it. And, I guess that's why Zoom's so good. Somebody just set up to build Zoom and did it. And now I think with obviously the work from home scenario, Microsoft's really found itself on the back foot. But, I'm sure they'll come up with something that'll be adequate. But, they really got caught on the hop here.
I mean, just before we move on, though, do you get that sense that Microsoft just likes to do things the hard way when they design things? Because it seems like their initial sort of foray into anything doesn't seem to be 100%, and it takes them a while to get to something that perhaps others get to quicker.
Well, yeah,
or is that unfair?
Well, I don't think it is unfair, but I also think that's worth looking at the situation. I mean, they dominate the Office environment with Office, and to think that they haven't in the last 3 to 4 years pre-COVID even thought of integrating a video option into the platform is quite astounding.
All right, so moving on to Apple now, and I had to laugh when I read this because we've spoken about Google Glass in the past, and it seems like Apple's working on its own version called Apple Glass due next year. Apparently, it was going to come this year, but coronavirus and all stopped a lot of things from happening. But it's interesting that they're pursuing this route with this particular technology, and that the rumor being that they're trying to address the things that caused Google Glass to have its problems, particularly, freaking people out with the camera on board and the privacy angle, and whether or not it was, just too creepy a product to have out there. Do you think that they're going to have a better shot at it in terms of delivering something that could actually work?
This is a really good question. I'll start by just going somewhere else with this. Wow, 8 years ago, Google Glass. 8 years ago. So they had the technology 8 years ago. And now they definitely have the data coverage and the ability to make whatever product like glass work. So, I mean, I don't know. We're already under surveillance. I mean, COVID apps for tracing. Well, that's a surveillance device, but, cameras, tracking of your phone anyway by Facebook and Google. I still don't think we're ready for it, though, as a society. What do you think?
Yeah, well, my question was why, actually, given that there was already an attempt at it. I will say that in watching the last season of Westworld that was just released, that they were all over the place. They had their characters were wearing glasses that didn't have the cameras on them, but could alternate between looking like normal glasses, and then the lenses would actually show you, snippets of information and just feed it seemingly straight into your eyeball. But whether or not it's going to be something like that, I don't know. But it just seemed to me to be a curious thing to pursue for them. But having said that, Apple does have a tendency to develop things quietly for years and years and years without telling anyone. So, they could have been working on this for the past 8 years too, and have just now suddenly decided that they're going to release it because maybe it's in a shape that they're happy to release.
Yeah, I mean, it raises the question, though, which I think is the issue. It was never a technical issue. And I do think it's marvellous what they could do 8 years ago if they're still thinking of doing it now. But it's always been a privacy issue. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, how they're going to overcome that, except say that it's different. We're Apple.
Yeah, well, it seems like the primary difference is that they're not including a camera on the actual device itself. So there isn't something that looks like it might be spying on other people, which I think was one of the core issues with Google Glass. In that it's fine, I guess, if you're letting the device spy on yourself, but not when you're in public on other people. And that might be the differentiator. It's just a question of what the use case is then and whether or not it'll take off or not.
Yeah, but I mean, like a watch, it'll be hooked up to your phone. And, I'm not sure that they'll have a better use case, but maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we haven't done much on the Trumpster in the last little while, or because we've just been talking about COVID related material. But of course, these two topics dovetail as they normally do. And he was in fine form in the past week. I have to quote him when he said, and I tested very positively in another sense this morning. Yeah, I tested positively towards negative, right? So I tested perfectly this morning, meaning I tested negative. And it was hard not to, reading it doesn't do it justice because when you actually see him deliver that line, it's done with a level of sarcasm that just, flies in the face of just about the whole purpose of why you would be doing all that sort of thing. And we've talked about like the tactics that he's employing and whatnot, but I'm not entirely sure how that's right out of his playbook, but whether or not that's actually going to help him at all, and whether or not it's actually impacting his ability to, still, I guess, reach people is interesting. I mean, he's got his diehard supporters and that, but probably those people that were sitting on the fence before, he's got to be turning a lot of those people off with that sort of remark.
Yeah, look, I I think it's impossible at this stage to determine what the COVID experience in the US has done to his support base and his chances of re-election. And I suspect it's either going to either crush him or support him all the way through for a second term. I don't think there's going to be a middle ground on this.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing too, just to build on that, was that visit to that to Michigan, where he had his mask on behind the scenes, but he didn't want to give the reporters the pleasure of seeing him with a mask on, so he took it off. And it's like that perception of what he's putting out there. Any normal scenario, it effectively he's making fun of it and sort of upending norms and all that sort of thing. But this is probably not the sort of thing where a norm should be upended, if just because that's the only way he knows how to do it.
Yeah, it's exposing him on a whole lot of levels, unfortunately for him. But maybe it's just showing everyone, his supporters included, sort of the way he operates.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's much more we can say about it. The 4 years we've had of Trump have been quite remarkable, not just for his antics, but also for the other things that have happened in the world, like the COVID experience. And, I guess it all gets written down in history, and people in the future will choose to believe what facts they choose to believe. Or something.
I was just finally, I was thinking on a more macro level, this idea of when a politician bumps up to a scenario that doesn't suit their playbook. So everyone, potentially is wondering what was going to stop his playbook from working. And this may potentially be what it is, because like I think you've said on one of our previous episodes, you can't bully a virus out of existence. It's still going to be there, and it's still going to cause havoc. And calling it names or yelling at it or saying you're fired is not going to do anything about it.
He's a master of manipulating human, or humans, and the human psyche. But he obviously knows nothing about viral sort of or viruses in general. Maybe the only thing he knows is viral media.
Exactly. All right, we might wrap it up there. So don't forget our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. Subscribe to our YouTube and Vimeo channels, our RSS feeds, and you can watch us on all of your devices. And we greatly appreciate your visit to our website. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.